Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I would like to welcome you to our PAX East recap discussion. I am your host, Richard Billy Jr., and tonight I'm joined by Mr. Jakejames Lugo. How's it going, Mr. Lugo?
I'm good, Rich. I just got back from PAX East yesterday. It was a pretty fun weekend, a lot to talk about, lots to unpack.
Absolutely. And we are joined by Mr. Max Moeller. How's it going, Max?
It's going pretty good, man. Happy to be back on the show and talking to everyone.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys thought about the show, as well as I'm sure a lot of people listening or watching live or later also are looking forward to your thoughts. So, first and foremost, before we get into the discussion, I just want to ask you guys, what did you think about PAX before going into it? Obviously, Max, you could talk about, this being your first PAX. How did you think the experience was going to be beforehand? And also, Mr. Lugo, I'm going to ask you, as someone who's already gone to PAX, what did you guys have? What did you guys think how PAX 2017 was going to turn out? So, how about you go first, Max?
All right. I was gonna say during the week before PAX, like Sunday through Wednesday, I was a bit stressed. Not really because of PAX, more because of like school and finals week. They just happened to correlate. So I was worried that I was gonna get to PAX and like have to be working on school stuff and everything, and that would like kind of deter from the experience. But I ended up getting everything done, which was really cool. And I realized once I got on the flight and everything was okay, and like I was flying out towards PAX, like a lot of stress was just gone, and I wasn't really worried about like PAX and doing interviews and everything like that. It just like seemed like something that I was just going to be okay at and just enjoy. And once I like got off the flight and everything like that, and I got to the hotel and I started talking to Anthony, and actually I ran into JJ. We were just walking around, so we talked for like an hour before he went off to go do something. And then Anthony Nash and I were talking for a little bit, and that was our first time like interacting, and we actually kind of hit it off talking about like Zelda and Dark Souls and everything. So talking to both of them and just having those conversations go well, and just like hearing about their experiences and everything was awesome. And that was pretty reassuring. It was like, if they can do it, like, so can I, you know what I mean? It's like, they're there if I need anything, they know their shit. So I always would have them to like go back on if I ever needed anything. So then I made sure to like go to bed kind of early. And then I woke up and I went over to PAX, and honestly, right away when we got the press early access where we got to like roam around for an hour, that was so awesome because I was able to walk around and kind of see where all the games are and all my appointments that I had made. I could just like kind of get the general area of where they are. And I thought it was going to be a little stressful getting through the floor, trying to get to each appointment, but I quickly learned that wasn't really the case. Like I found I had a lot of time in between appointments, so I found myself making a lot of appointments throughout my time there. Like on Friday, I made some appointments for like Sunday and Saturday to fill up my schedule because I wasn't sure how much free time I would have and how hard it would be to like get to those places. But it was very, very simple and like easy. And I always made sure to try and get to these appointments like kind of early, like a few minutes early, so I can just check out the game and talk to the people right beforehand, which was cool. But honestly, it was just kind of a stress-free experience for me this time around. Like I was just looking forward to talking to all the devs, and all of the devs were very nice and open. There were some that like were just kind of awkward and shy and quiet, but no one was outright rude, because I know that I've heard some stories about devs being rude and everything, and I figured I'd be able to handle that and just be kind of like, yeah, you know what, you don't need to be rude to me. Like I'm reviewing, or I'm looking at your game. I'm being nice to you. You know, you have no reason to be mean to me. But I luckily didn't run into any of that this time around. And all the people I talked to were really nice. The food was pretty expensive, which I should have more expected. But I ended up making my own food and just kind of bringing it around and making sure I didn't have to spend too much money on food. But I enjoyed the experience overall. It was just a really, really fun time. There really wasn't a dull moment the entire time during PAX.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
So that's just like a quick first impressions. Obviously, we're going to get into more of the actual what you guys did each day. But how about you, Mr. Lugo? Any quick thoughts, quick recap thoughts on the overall experience this year?
Okay, there we go. Yeah, I was muted there for a second. It like froze. But yeah, this PAX was interesting. As you guys have known, I've gone to about 3 PAXs now. You know, this will be my third PAX right now that I've gone as a media person, and I have to say it gets more interesting for me personally every year because I do different stuff every year. Like as you know, it's like an expansion upon the previous year. I had more appointments than I did last year. You remember Rich? Last year I had a lot of like first time big interviews that I got to do, which I got to do again this year. You know, specifically with Square Enix, but also I got a chance to see other people and other devs and other publishers and a lot more other individuals that I ran into while on the floor, while exploring and running around and stuff. That was fun. It's always good to go to PAX East because unlike E3, while it's still bustling and it's still busy, it's not overbearing, you know, with the abundance of like, you know, brand new world-class world reveals and stuff like that. There's still new stuff there because we had games like Mass Effect Andromeda that were being showed, Nex Machina, you know, things like that. Crash Bandicoot was being played again at PAX at the PlayStation booth. The Nintendo Switch stuff, which is a whole nother beast. There was a lot of good new stuff that was there, but it wasn't to the point where it was like, oh, this is like the first time this is being revealed to the entire world. So there was still kind of, you know, that, you know, essence of being held back a little bit, but it was still just as exciting being around there with everybody. And it was fun. I enjoyed this PAX. You know, granted, it was cold as hell. Don't get me wrong, really cold. Anybody that was up there during PAX East 2017 knows exactly what I'm talking about because that breeze and that open air, that turned everybody into popsicles, you know, that very first day. So everybody wanted to stay warm inside the convention center. So it was all good, though. Had a lot of fun. Again, I can't wait to talk about the games that we're going to kind of get into that I saw while I was there.
Yeah, absolutely understand that. And I do know that as someone who actually is from Boston, already know how ridiculous the weather is this time of the year. So hopefully, you know, PAX eventually sees this video and they can listen to my advice, which would be just have PAX East in April to avoid all of the BS with the snow and all this other stuff going on.
Please have it in April because it was so much better last year or the year before when we went in April and it was not as cold.
Yeah, and you know, one of the major things with GDC, you know, when I went to GDC, a lot of people I know had said, no, to hell with PAX East. It's a week later. We're already tired from GDC. We're not going to PAX East. So that's why they need to spread these shows out. But, you know, we'll see if that changes next year. But obviously, you know, so great to hear the first impression. So let's start with the first day of PAX. Maybe you guys could tell me a few games that you played or just your pretty much general overall experiences that first day that you were there on the Friday. So, Max, how about you go first? Let us know how your Friday went.
My Friday was probably the most eventful day of the three just because it was all like so new to me and it took me a little bit to get used to. It took me a bit longer than I thought I would to get used to, but that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. So once I got onto the show floor, like I mentioned earlier, that press hour really helped me kind of just find where everything is and get my bearings a bit. I went to the Behemoth breakfast that they were having, which was cool, and I watched a few people playing the Pit People game, and I talked to them for a little bit about Behemoth and just about games they enjoyed, which was pretty cool. So that was my like introduction to it all. And then right at 10, when the floor opens up to everyone, was my first appointment, The Gardens Between. And that was a cool little indie game. It was a peaceful, kind of serene game for my first appointment. And the guy was really nice that I talked to. I can't recall his name right now, sadly, but I have his business card that I could look at later. But that was a nice experience. And then it only lasted like 15 minutes. That was another thing I wasn't sure of. I wasn't sure if these appointments would be like strict, like half-hour long things. But no, they always just they just went until we kind of were done talking, you know, and just had nothing else to say to each other, or just like hit it off, and then I had to go do something else. But then I ended up turning around, and just the floor was kind of packed. Because, you know, I was focusing on the games the whole time, and then I just turned around, just all these people are just walking everywhere. I was just kind of like, wow, this is insane. Like having to just push through it. But like no one was rude about it from my experience. Like just everyone was just kind of like, oh, excuse me, got to get through here. And everyone like kind of just let me go through my things and do what I needed to do as well, which was really nice. And my appointments were kind of spread out that day. that was my most spread out day with appointments. So I was able to explore the show floor quite a bit after the press hour as well, and just like kind of see everyone's reactions to games and everything like that, which is really interesting, and kind of see how the devs interacted with everyone as I'm walking through. And like it was interesting being press, because I've never been like not press at one of these. This is my first time ever going to one of these conferences. So I would be like just watching a game, just watching someone play a game, and a dev would walk up to me and just be like, hey, do you want to try this out? Or what do you think of this so far? And I'd be kind of caught off guard, because sometimes I'm just like, I'm not thinking too much. I'm just like, oh, this looks fun, you know? So then I would just tell them, I'd be like, oh yeah, this looks cool most of the time. And then I would try and check it out, and I would talk to them for a little bit. And that just started happening so much that I just got used to it kind of quickly. And I was able to just start having really good conversations with devs. I talked a lot to devs about just like their favorite games, their inspirations for their game while we were talking about it. And it was really cool. Some of them, I played every single game that I had an appointment with, but there were some where like the dev played a game a lot of the time, much more than I did, but they would talk to me and they were showing me things, which was kind of cool. I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting to always just be playing the game and having them talk to me. But that actually worked out really well for some games. And then they still always let me try it out afterwards. I always made sure I got some time to play it. It was also interesting, like kind of how prepared some of them were. Like some of them didn't seem that prepared at all. Like some of them, it seemed like this was kind of their first experience being at a conference. And then others had like a flash drive, and they were just like, oh yeah, so we have a press kit ready for you. We'll trade business cards and everything like that. They were just instantly ready. So it was always kind of interesting seeing what the dev would say and like what they wanted me to do and everything. But I kind of got into a groove where I would always be sure to like trade business cards if things went well, and like ask for a press kit, or like say we'll be in touch for a press kit and stuff like that. If they didn't, like I always made sure to kind of take charge and do that. And then I found myself, as I was exploring different games, ones that I didn't have appointments for, just like going up to them and being like, hey, your game is really cool, and I think I would love to cover it for our site, you know? And we would end up training, and they always looked like so happy. They were like, oh really, that's awesome to see. And it was so cool to see like in the devs' eyes just like how happy they were that someone was like, wow, your game was pretty cool, like you know, I'd love to see more of it. They're always like so excited, because I know that sometimes some of the audience, just the random members, just the non-press, they wouldn't say much about the game, because I would see the devs asking them. They just would be kind of like, oh yeah, it was fun, but they wouldn't really say why or anything like that. So I noticed that early on, and I tried to like make sure that I told them why it was fun or why it wasn't fun, or what I liked and didn't like about it. I also got to try VR for the first time, which was pretty unreal. It was this game, I think it was called Mast, M-A-S-T, I believe. It was something like that, or Mare, M-A-R-E, I think it was called. And there was no like hand controls or anything. It was just the VR headset, and you control a bird with your eyes, and there was these different posts that you would have to go to. If you wanted to fly to a post, you would stare at it for a few seconds, and it would start to activate, and then your bird would fly over to it. And you had this girl that would follow you around, and you had to lead her to the end of like these puzzles that you would solve by it bringing her to different places. And they had me on this stool with no back. And it was kind of scaring me a little bit, because I'm a little bit afraid of heights. So I'd be flying around as a bird, and I'd be flying over to a post, and I would turn around to see if the girl was following, and I would almost like jump, because it'd just be this giant, like vast open space that it looked like I was going to fall into, because you know, you're from the perspective of a bird. So that was kind of funny, because I always heard VR was like that, but this was my first time experiencing it for myself. And like, I am sold on that. That was an unreal experience. And it was the Oculus too, so that was pretty cool to try out. But and then the rest of my first day, it just went really well. It was just a lot of just appointments and talking to devs and just meeting people. I love how open everyone was. Like if I saw someone watching a game, I would just go up and talk to them about it and ask them what they think about it, and they would just tell me, and they'd be very like happy to talk to me, and we just have good conversations. I didn't really have a bad conversation with anyone, which is really cool to see.
See, yes, all of that sounds great. And I just would like to say something very quickly before I give the floor to Mr. Lugo. That what you described about how the indie developers, they show appreciation for when you say you want to cover their games. I really do feel that that is something that definitely is good to see, because I know that, you know, a lot of times, you know, I can say this speaking from as the editor-in-chief of the website, you know, you would feel as though there's a need to always cover the big major titles, which is important. But the indie titles, especially, also need to have some coverage because a lot of the ideas that they're trying to convey in these games are sometimes better than the mainstream titles. And I think that I really learned that by going to GDC, because a lot of the games I saw, it's pretty great concepts, but you really question why are they not getting the coverage that they deserve to get. And you definitely feel as though when you have the ability to cover these games, you definitely feel as though that you are providing a great service because you're letting more people know about these types of games as well. So just wanted to make sure I threw that in there. So Mr. Lugo, how about you let us know how your first day at PAX East 2017 went?
Yeah, my first day at PAX was fun. It was interesting. Again, like Max, I went to the Behemoth. That's where everybody goes to, especially for breakfast. Like, as us as media, they kind of throw us a big breakfast for that first hour of PAX East, where it's not open to the public yet, so we could go there, play all the games from the Behemoth. There was this giant Castle Crashers arcade cabinet, which I still think is awesome. They have that there every year, which is pretty dope, where you could get up to like 4 people play Castle Crashers together on one giant arcade machine, kind of like the X-Men arcade machine from back in the day, where it would have like 6 players. Stuff that to me, stuff like that is pretty cool, and I always love seeing stuff like that. But to get out to the real stuff, I saw a bunch of stuff that first day at PAX East. So that first day, I got a chance to go meet up with HyperX Gaming, and those are the guys that make a bunch of different peripherals for various different, like platforms, and mostly PC stuff. They do also a lot of competitive gaming stuff where they make headsets, they make keyboards, they also make different mouse pads and mice for you to use whenever you're playing online, you're playing competitively and stuff. They want to give you the best quality stuff that they have. And I thought that was cool. I got a chance to check out a couple of the models of the different headsets, the different types of like sound levels that they had, the levels of comfort. And obviously you guys know how expensive headsets can be. Those headsets were pretty comfortable for the price that they were actually selling them for, because they were selling them during the show. And one of the cool things, even though I can't go into detail about it now, they were also showing a mouse that they were actually going to have eventually. They were going to announce sometime, I think it's like in the next week or so, for people that play on PC and like doing competitive games like Overwatch, like Counter-Strike, and the like. So that was pretty interesting. I got a little bit of some schooling about peripherals, especially for PC gaming, and I thought that was pretty neat. So definitely big shout-outs to them. Besides that, I got a chance to finally play with the Nintendo Switch, and I had it in a couple different ways. The first thing I did, I went over to the Nintendo booth, and I spent a lot of time there, not only just waiting in line, which was, by the way, ridiculously long line. What the heck? Besides that, when I finally got inside and I actually got to play some games, I spent time playing Ultra Street Fighter 2 on the Nintendo Switch. I have opinions about this. I will say, as a Street Fighter fan that has played just about every version of Street Fighter 2 that has ever been released, the one thing I can say that I don't like about Ultra Street Fighter 2 is the fact that it has that slowdown from the Super Nintendo version. What's strange, a strange design choice by Nintendo and Capcom is to emulate that same type of slowdown that was in the Super Nintendo version that came from the limitations of the hardware. And if you don't know what I'm referring to, maybe you grew up playing Street Fighter 2 on Super Nintendo, but for people that don't know, basically, because the game wasn't arcade perfect, kind of like how it was in the arcade machines, things were a lot more faster with Street Fighter 2 back in the day, especially Super Street Fighter 2, which is like probably the fastest version of that game. What they try to do with Ultra Street Fighter 2 is that every time you get hit, especially on like a counter hit, or if you get knocked against the edge of the screen and stuff, there's this big long slowdown that happens where it like takes a moment for you to like hit the ground and to things get back up to their normal pace. I was never a fan of that, and I always felt, looking at that, I was saying to myself, like, are they really going to do this for this? Was supposed to be the definitive version of this game? Are they really going to try to implement something like this after Super Street Fighter 2 HD Remix, which didn't have that? It was more of a faster game, and things were happening one-to-one. There was no kind of like, to me, this is like padding with the speed and stuff. I never really enjoyed that. What I am hoping is that there is some sort of like, option or some type of like setting in the options menu where you could turn that off, because I think that hinders the game a little bit, especially in competitive play. Some people might disagree with me. They might think that that's actually pretty good. I don't think so. I think that the speed of Ultra Street Fighter 2 is much better. I mean, it would be much better with the HD remix type of settings. Even though what I do love is I love the updated artwork from the original Super Turbo. I love the idea that they're having a bunch of classic artwork that are going to be unlockables. That's pretty cool. I love the new characters, Evil Ryu and Evil Ken. I think it's, even though they're palette swaps, I totally understand why they're palette swaps. And, you know, again, it's more new content, which is okay. I do think that the game is still overpriced. It's for $40 on the Nintendo Switch, and I think that's way too overpriced for a game that's like another version of a game that's been around for over 20-something years. You know, that's just my opinion, and I'm pretty sure there's some of you out there that feel somewhat similar, you know, here and there, but it is what it is. Besides that, what else did I get to play on the Nintendo Switch? I got to play Super Bomberman R. And to be totally honest with you, I still think that it's as meh as what a lot of people were saying. One of the things I don't like with Super Bomberman R is the fact that the Nintendo Switch, the D-pad or the directional buttons are buttons. They're not a D-pad, like a true proper D-pad, which I think is weird. I was never a fan of that, and I still don't kind of agree with Nintendo's direction. I understand that when you detach the Joy-Cons, you have the analog stick for your directional movement, and you use those buttons as your normal buttons and such. But when it's connected and docked on the actual Switch itself, I just wasn't a fan of that. I don't like playing games like Bomberman where you have to use the analog stick. I just don't think it feels that great. So that was a little bit of a hindrance, but it's still true Bomberman. It's fun. There's, again, Bomberman with a new coat of paint. Very interesting with the way that they're handling, like, as far as, like, story mode and things like that. But also, I played more multiplayer with it, and I played, I think, about 2 or 3 matches worth of multiplayer. That's at least as much time as I had spent with it. That was pretty fun for what it was, despite my little gripes here and there. But also, I got a chance to play ARMS, which is kind of like one of the true experiences that you're going to want to play on the Nintendo Switch. And I had a very bad experience. The reason being is because there was a lot of syncing problems with the left Joy-Con. That's a problem that's been reported on for quite a while. I still believe and kind of maintain, you know, a little bit of faith that the reason why I had that problem is because there was a bunch of Nintendo Switches in the area. Where the left Joy-Con just wasn't syncing properly to the console. It could have been a dud. It could have been one of those things where it was having the same problem that everybody was reporting on. But that was my experience with ARMS. The concept is neat. The concept is interesting, but I got to get more time playing it to really understand the game and really kind of get like a true kind of like solid experience with it. Besides that, on my first day, I went to a Nintendo appointment. I actually got to chat it up with Nintendo of America, and I got a chance to play Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. And my experience with that was pretty cool. This is probably one of the better Nintendo Switch experiences I had while I was at PAX. Reason being is because I got to play a bunch of different modes that are going to be included with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe that weren't in the original Mario Kart 8. There was this Cops and Robbers mode that I felt was really fun. Different for this version of the game where there's 2 teams. One team is a bunch of people that are just running around the map. They're the robbers. They're supposed to be kind of like, you know, escaping capture and stuff. And then you have the other team that are playing as the coppers, where they actually have these piranha plants on their cars in the front, and you have to basically drive over towards the people that are running around and capture them. When you eat them with the piranha plant, they get placed in this little dungeon or like little cage where they're in jail. So the people that are still running around that haven't gotten caught yet have to hit the different switches on the bottom of the map, you know, as you're driving around in order to free their opponents. The winners are either the robbers if they all remain was it without actually being captured, or the coppers if they capture everybody, which is cool. So that, again, that was a very hectic game mode. It was a lot of fun. I played it with a bunch of other journalists that were there. We really had a good time. They had another mode there that was included that was kind of like a coin rush mode that you've probably seen in a variety of other Mario Kart as well as other mascot racing games. Very simple, straightforward, to the point where you just have to gather the most coins on a particular map. They also had the true battle mode from Mario Kart. If you guys remember, Mario Kart 8 didn't really have a battle mode that was true to the essence of the series that they've had in past releases. But this time they've actually brought it back. They brought back a bunch of new tracks as well, some from previously older games, you know, from throughout the Mario Kart series, but a couple of newer maps that looked pretty damn good. There was one map that was kind of like a dragon-themed one, like a Chinese dragon, Chinese zodiac type of themed, racetrack, and that was pretty fun to be on there. There's a few others as well. I got to play with a lot of the newer characters, including the Squid Girl and the Squid Boy. I got to play with Dry Bones. I got to play with King Boo. That was a lot of fun and very interesting stuff. It was an overall good experience. Besides that, at that same meeting, I had a chance to also see Fire Emblem Echoes, which is the remake of the older Fire Emblem game that was on the Famicom. Now, to me, the game looks good. The game looks very, very good for what they're doing. It borrows heavily from Shin Megami Tensei 4, the Apocalypse, which is the new Shin Megami Tensei game that's on Nintendo 3DS. This is the first time in the Fire Emblem series where you'll be able to freely run around a dungeon area and get into battles, random battles that you run into and such. So that's pretty cool. What's very interesting is that those random battles are done in the same vein as like you would do in any other Fire Emblem game map. So you can run around and explore the different dungeons and get different abilities to look through different areas and gather items, gather new abilities, run into other bosses and stuff. But every time you run into a random battle, it becomes a Fire Emblem map, and it's different every single time. And I thought that was pretty cool. The models on the characters look very good. I'm not going to lie. For a remake, this is a really cool way to take a remake as far as the source material is concerned. Again, it's a much older game, but the way that they're handling the voiceover, which is all the lines and all the different types of dialogue in the game are voiced over, which I think is awesome. Very, very freaking cool. The characters that you run into are, again, very similar as far as story and narrative to the original game, but there are some changes for the better, some of which they weren't ready to talk about at that point in time. But I liked what I saw. I liked the combat. Again, if you love Fire Emblem, you're going to love Fire Emblem Echoes. If you like the aesthetic of like Fire Emblem Awakening or Fire Emblem Fates, you're really going to love this, especially for a game that's older in the franchise that's getting reimagined. What I would love to see is if this does successful, I would love to see them redo games for both Shadow Dragon, for Marth. I would love to see them redo games for Roy, as well as also Path of Radiance, which is Ike. A lot of the classic characters in the Fire Emblem series. I would love to see them go back to those games and re-release them and give them the same type of treatment that they're doing this, because this is awesome. As a Fire Emblem fan, this kicks ass, honestly. And finally, to wrap up my day one, I had a chance to play Nex Machina. Bottom line, let me just put it out there. Housemarque Games makes really kick-ass games as far as gameplay-wise. They make really good games, solid experiences that are gameplay experience or gameplay focused or gameplay-centric. Because Nex Machina, twin-stick shooter that has a little bit of elements of like, not puzzle elements, but like, as far as like the speed and stuff, they're known for games that are like, fast-paced like that, where you're kind of like just destroying a bunch of enemies and you have to save different survivors and such like that. That's pretty cool. I loved it. It was a lot of fun. I played it, I think it's 2 times throughout the entire weekend. I cannot wait to check out that game. I think it's a really solid experience that you guys are going to want to check out on your PlayStation 4. And final thing for my day one, I went over to ThinkGeek. I got a chance to talk to them a little bit about some of their new products that were coming out. ThinkGeek actually had some new figures. They had these 20-sided die that actually lit up every time that you got a true critical 20. So if you play a lot of tabletop games or a lot of role-playing games and use 20-sided die, these are pretty cool. I guess it's more of a luxury type of item, not something that you would get offhand. If you wanted to really take your game, like if you play Dungeons and Dragons or anything else to the next level, that's pretty dope. They had a figure that was from Fallout 4, which is the power armor figure. So they had a character that was in power armor that was really nice. It was like a big size type of figure and had a lot of different parts to it that you could, again, customize and put together stuff. That was pretty awesome. And then they had this really big seller that was at PAX that probably sold the most of all their items at PAX East this weekend. They actually had this piranha plant that was actually a puppet. So it was like one of those plushy puppets that you've seen that, you can move around and you can put it on your hand and move it around and stuff. But it was a piranha plant from Nintendo, from Super Mario. And I thought that was pretty cool, really cute. It was, again, very small compared to like some of the other stuff that they had there, but it was still dope. And again, if you like stuff like that, that's right up your alley. If you love collectibles, especially if you love Nintendo. But that wraps up my day one of PAX. Again, I went to panels. I went to the Kind of Funny panel, and I saw a couple other things in there. But those were really my game experiences from day one.
All of that sounds awesome. And now I must ask a question, just so I'm clear. So Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Edition, would you say that based off of what you have played, this is the definitive edition that you need? Or if you have a Wii U version, then you're fine?
This is definitely the definitive edition of Mario Kart 8. No questions about it. But I still don't think it's a reason to buy the Switch. I don't think it's that reason that you get the console, $300+. But if you play Mario Kart 8 and if you're already getting a Switch and you love that series, I think this is the best version of that game because of all the new content they got included into it. That's definitely the better version to own right now over the Wii U version.
Awesome. Hey, well, I'm glad that you was able to finally get a chance to play some Nintendo games. I know It was very hard to get access to Nintendo games at E3 last year.
Ridiculously hard. I mean, lucky enough, I finally got hands-on time with the Switch, and I got a kind of a basis of like what that console is about. Definitely still, I didn't get a chance to play Zelda Breath of the Wild on the Switch because that line was just way too long. You know, when I went there to Nintendo, we were only allowed to play 3 games of our choice at the booth before we had to get back in line. And that line was just way too long because everybody there at PAX East wanted to play with the Nintendo Switch. That was probably one of the bigger attractions of the weekend. Understandably so, because it's brand new hardware. But I didn't get the chance to play Breath of the Wild there. I did, however, I will say, when I was with my boy HMK, if you guys know me, you guys know I hang out around a lot with HMK. I got to play Breath of the Wild on his Nintendo Switch, and I got a chance to mess around with that. It did feel good. It's one of those games you cannot experience in a small bit. You have to really spend time with it to really get what it's all about. I will say, looks beautiful in tablet mode. Controls very solid, very awesome. Beautiful music, beautiful sounds. I definitely, at one point, hopefully down the line, want to spend some more time with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely will look into that. But now, that sounds like an excellent first day. Yeah, for both you and Max. So, Max, feel free to now let us know how the second day was at PAX East for you.
All right, so the second day was definitely the least eventful of my 3 days. It was still, of course, like fun as hell, and I got to see some pretty cool games. I actually got to try out the Switch as well on Saturday. I didn't get to like do any. It wasn't a Switch-specific game. It was this game called Snake Pass, which basically, to put it shortly, you play as a snake trying to get through levels. It's like a Banjo-Kazooie art style, but it's a cool game. But I really want to talk about the Switch because I have some interesting opinions on it. I like how it feels. I was able to use the Pro Controller first, and the Pro Controller was great. The Pro Controller was like Xbox One controller. I didn't even like think anything of it. I forgot I was using another controller until I had to go down and use the face buttons because they're switched around from what they normally are in Xbox, as we know. Then the person pulled out the Joy-Cons, and I was able to use the Joy-Cons wirelessly with the Switch sitting on its kickstand. And I was probably, I want to say 6 or 7 feet away from the screen while it was on its kickstand. And honestly, I found it really hard to see. I was kind of like squinting and having to lean forward to kind of see what was going on with it. And that kind of bothered me. That kind of made it unenjoyable to play the game. So that's something that if I ever were to get a Switch, I just would never really play it that way. I understand, like, if you're playing Mario Kart, like, in public or something, and you have the Joy-Cons, like, split and there's 2 people playing, like, that's probably the only way you're going to be able to do it. And if you're sitting close enough, like, that's fine. But if you're more than, like, 5 feet away, I found it kind of hard to see. But then when I had the Joy-Cons attached to the screen and I was playing with it, I loved it. It felt really, really good. I had one small issue with it, but I liked how, like, on the Wii U pad, they kind of have this weird curvature where the shoulder buttons are, whereas on the Switch, that's all kind of flat now. It has a flat back. It's pretty light. I was surprised by how light it was. And my one kind of problem with it was that the sticks, they're both, like, level with each other, and the face buttons are, like, kind of higher up. And normally when I'm playing, or normally when someone's playing, you have like both your thumbs on the sticks and then you switch over to the buttons. But like kind of the placement of the Switch where you have your hands is that your thumbs are on the buttons on the right side and then the stick on the left side. So I found myself having to kind of reach down awkwardly to use the right thumbstick because, you know, it's like a vertical controller. And it makes sense because when you have to take off the Joy-Cons, like that's the only way you'll be able to use the stick like in a usable way. Otherwise it would be really uncomfortable and you kind of have to hold it upside down and it wouldn't work out. So that's the reason that they have it in that design. But I just found it kind of uncomfortable. I think it's something you would get used to over time, though. It might have just been because it was my first time using it. But that's only really a small complaint. Other than that, I really enjoyed the system and I thought it was really cool to try out, even though it wasn't like any Switch-specific game. That game is coming to all consoles, but I definitely recommend it, and it made me want to try it out and play with it more. I didn't get to play with the touchscreen or anything like that, which kind of sucks, but oh well. Other than that, I was exploring the floor quite a lot more. I tried out some of the board games, actually, because I was playing video games for a bit, and I needed to go eat, and I didn't want to like eat while playing video games, so I went over to the board game section because there was also food over there, and I got one of this giant turkey leg. I forgot what they called it. They based it off of Zelda though. It was just like the giant leg of turkey, and it was drawn with like a Zelda sword, which is really cool, and they were advertising it everywhere, and it was this big thing. So I was eating that while trying out some of the board games over there, and those people were really nice. That everyone's like willing to teach you for free, which is really cool. So I met some cool people doing that before going back to the games. But I'd have to say, other than that, not too much happened on my Saturday. It was just a normal day. My Sunday is really where I had all these appointments and was talking to all these people and everything like that.
That's cool. That sounds good. So based off of what I've heard so far, it sounds like both you and Mr. Lugo are sold on the Switch. So I definitely expect
Most definitely.
I definitely expect you both to have a Switch before the year is over now.
I'm planning on it. That is definitely one of the plans, to have that and the PS4 by the end of this year.
But I will say, if you have to make a choice, and I'm not throwing shade at Nintendo, you need to go with the PlayStation 4.
Oh yeah, without question.
Yeah,
without question.
Yeah, we'll see. So, Mr. Lugo, how about you let us know how your second day went?
Again, more games that I got to play. A couple more extra appointments. Number one, I got to play more Tekken 7. And you guys know I love Tekken 7. I played it a bunch of times. I played it with Harada-san around when I went to go visit Bandai Namco a while back. So again, seeing it again, I'm still loving it, which is a good sign. I got to play more with Akuma in Tekken 7, which was cool. I got my butt whipped afterwards when I was trying to play Law against my friend. We were just kind of going at it. We were actually playing on stage at the Bandai booth, and we were using the new arcade sticks that they had on display, which was okay. It was good. They felt comfortable and stuff. I never really liked playing Tekken on an actual stick more as compared to like when I play Street Fighter. I always loved the controller, like a PlayStation controller for Tekken, but that's just me. Some people feel different. Everybody has their own preference when they play a game. But I'm super excited for Tekken 7. I can't wait to play that story mode. I really want to deep dive into that down the line. But besides that, I also saw a couple other games that were interesting. Very, very interesting stuff while I was at PAX East. Speaking of Bandai Namco, I got a chance to check out this game called Little Nightmares. Now, I don't know if you guys saw this, okay, or you got any press releases or whatnot. Little Nightmares is a very interesting, suspenseful game. Now, it reminds me very heavily, as far as like aesthetic is concerned, about, or at least it reminds me of, Coraline? A little bit of like, movies like that, or very similar in their aesthetic, where they're creepy. They have very exaggerated, stylized models or characters. And that's pretty cool. What makes this one interesting is because it's very creepy in its atmosphere that it sets. You play as this young little girl that's been transported to this weird place, this weird dimension or area that you don't really know a lot about. And you're trying to kind of like navigate where you're at, moving from place to place. It's like this giant world where everything is like exceedingly huge and you're so small, almost like if you're a tiny person. And there's these big giant people that are just walking around, or giant beings that are walking around that are grotesque, that are almost nasty looking, but you have to avoid them. You have to use a lot of stealth and kind of avoid, them actually catching you. And when they catch you, or at least when they're pursuing you, it gets very, hectic as far as, the emotion and the tenseness and the suspense that you experience. It was very, very cool as far as an atmospheric type of game. And I couldn't wait to play more of it. I only got to play one small section, and they kind of ended off on a very suspenseful note, which I thought was pretty dope. So I can't wait to check that out. I got to talk to, Matthew, and I hope I pronounced his name right, Matthew Comfer, who's one of the devs over there, which is pretty dope. And again, I really am interested in that game. That seems like something that's very, very cool that a lot of people are going to want to check out whenever they get a chance. Another game that I got to check out was Has Been Heroes. Has Been Heroes is going to be on the Nintendo Switch. It's going to be on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. This is a very strategy-heavy type of game. It's got elements of RPGs, invested into it, or JRPGs, or more traditional RPGs. But there's this big strategy element where you pick heroes of a different, various different types of like stats and abilities, and you formulate your own team, and you go along this grid of different areas, running into enemies, picking up items, and trying to work your way through the different maps that they have in the game that are procedurally generated, and destroy every single boss at the end of the map. By doing so, the further and further that you get different powerful abilities, you get different powerful equipment and other stuff that really allow you to take on the different challenges that as you further go on. It has a little bit of roguelike elements to it. Again, it's procedurally generated with all the maps that you run into. So no two nodes or no two maps are ever really truly the same. There's a lot of different varieties of enemies that are into it. I asked the developers when I was there, and I talked to the PR people, and I talked to the developer there from the game, and they were talking, they were in early talks here or there about maybe bringing it to other platforms that they weren't really talk about, but they did confirm that it was going to be on the Switch, it was going to be on PS4, Xbox One, PC. It's very strategy heavy. There's a lot of stuff to keep track of. There's all these different things that are happening. You have to really plan out your actions and really plan out your attacks and see where you can maximize your damage and such. It was really, really interesting. At first, I was kind of like all jumbled up. I really didn't know what to expect, and I wasn't really kind of, really getting it within the first, minute or so when I was playing it. But as they started to explain to me the system and explain to me different strategies and some of the spells that were in the demo that I played, I really started to pick up on, okay, what's a good plan of attack and what's a good way of going about this situation when I got these enemies that are just constantly coming at me, and I have to figure out what are the best spells to destroy them with before their actual position reaches my characters and kills my characters. Very, very cool. Very interesting. If you haven't checked it out yet, definitely go up on YouTube when you have a chance to look up the trailer for it. The gameplay is very, very unique as far as, how these types of RPGs and roguelikes are handled. I think this is going to be one of those hits where it's going to resonate with a really hardcore audience because of how complex it is. And I can't wait to play more eventually. It's very interesting. Very, very interesting type of game. Besides that, okay, let's get into the big stuff that I want to talk about because Rich, that I had this coming for a while. I got a chance to go hang out with Square Enix, and I went over to the Square Enix suite during PAX East. They had a whole section devoted to Square Enix games that wasn't on the floor that nobody else really got to see, and I got a chance to check out all the games that they have coming very, very soon, including doing a couple interviews with some of the people that are over there, a couple of the producers of some of their titles, their mobile titles specifically, including Kingdom Hearts Unchained Key, as well as also Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. I got a chance to talk to some of the producers there, including Hiroki Fujimoto, who's the producer of the game of Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, as well as also Okayama-san from Kingdom Hearts Unchained Key. We got a chance to talk about all the new content with the new update that's coming for that game, which is called Kingdom Hearts Union Cross, which adds a whole bunch of stuff to that game. It would take way too long, to really deep dive into all this stuff now. But bottom line, you'll find out about more of that stuff in the interviews that we're planning on going up later this week. We're going to talk about multiplayer for that game. We're going to talk about new medals. We're going to talk about extra content, story stuff. There was a lot that we unpacked there. He also had another game there that we talked a little bit about called Flame versus Blaze, which is kind of like, I want to say a MOBA, on mobile devices. It's kind of like a tongue twister, but it borrows a lot of elements from mobile games or MOBA games that you find on PC, but it's for mobile devices. It's for your tablets, for your phone. And they're trying to make it more of a streamlined MOBA that has interesting elements to it. One of the cool points about it, though, that's kind of going to be the pool for a lot of people, is that it's got the artwork and the aesthetic and the character designs done by the same person who did The World Ends With You, which I thought was very, very freaking cool. So we talked a little bit about that in our interview. With Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, got a chance to talk a little bit about the game because I'm coming in a little bit blind about a lot of the different stuff that's happening. I also got a chance to talk a little bit about, some of the other types of plans for newer content and events that are coming to Brave Exvius. We didn't really get to talk about the Ariana Grande collaboration that they did, which was, from a while back. But I'm pretty sure eventually at some point after talking with them for a bit, they may do something like that down the line. Nothing confirms, but they're talking about it. They're trying to get an idea of how everybody's going to receive that collaboration and see how the game takes off from there. They're doing weekly events, so they're constantly adding new content to that game. So hopefully that turns into something special. But here's the stuff that you guys are going to want to hear about. And I know I'm going long, Rich, so I apologize. Apologize to the chat.
That's okay. That's okay.
So there's a lot. There's a lot to unpack here that I saw at PAX. So bear with me here. Let's talk about some of the real Square Enix games you guys want me to talk about that I saw. I got a chance to see Kingdom Hearts 1.5 and 2.5 HD remaster HD remix. Those games put together, they're running at 60 frames per second, kind of like Kingdom Hearts HD 2.8, which was the Dream Drop Distance game that was included in that collection. The games look good at 60 frames per second. They look pretty good. I didn't really see a lot of problems when I was playing them. They're essentially the same games that you bought back on the PlayStation 3, but the 60 frames per second I think really works well for them. The games are all in 1080p. You know, they're upscaled. They look pretty damn good. Watching the cutscenes again for both Kingdom Hearts 1, you know, the very beginning opening cutscenes, and Kingdom Hearts 2 look very, very good overall. I didn't spend a lot of time with it because essentially the games are essentially the same. There's really not much to them other than those upscale and the 60 frames per second, but they look good. So if you already bought those collections again, there's not really a lot of reason for you to buy them again for another time, unless you want all 6 games on one disc. That's how that collection is going to be. But also, unless you also want to collect all the versions of Kingdom Hearts that come out, you know, there you go. You get all 6 of those games, which is Kingdom Hearts 1, Kingdom Hearts 2, Kingdom Hearts Rechain of Memories, Kingdom Hearts Recoded, Kingdom Hearts 358/2, and Birth by Sleep. Oh, no, yeah, Birth by Sleep, which is all included on that disc. Again, there's a lot of stuff in there to unpack. Other games I wanted to talk about, DLC. Let's talk about DLC. Final Fantasy 15 Episode Gladiolus. This I got a chance to check out. I got to check it out for about 30 minutes. Now, what I will say is this DLC, or this episodic content that's coming out for Final Fantasy 15, that's focusing on Gladio. It's really his story. He's basically in the story, you know, without any spoilers. Gladi is actually taking the trials of Gilgamesh, and he's going through all these different trials, I guess, you know, to gain some new power and such. Again, that's all I could say without spoiling it. But basically, this makes the game feel like a very different game. And the reason why I say that is because Final Fantasy 15 still felt like an RPG for what it was and everything else that you did in that game. But Episode Gladiolus makes this feel like a hack and slash or like an action game, very similar to Devil May Cry, but in a much more of a way where you feel like you're playing a much more weighty and a much more slower Dante. Don't get me wrong, the game or the DLC of the content is still fast, but that's how I felt when I was playing it. I got a chance to fight a bunch of different monsters that were from Final Fantasy 15, but they're translated over to this game where, again, they're handled a little bit differently. I got a chance to fight a boss character, which has a couple quick time events, nothing too crazy. You know, Gladi has these abilities that are some of his attacks that you expect to see from Final Fantasy 15, but the way that you control him and the way that you execute them, completely different. Does not play the same way as Noctis whatsoever. You have no warp ability. You are a straight up powerhouse. You are a straight up tank, which is what Gladio is what he is at his character's core. Now, let's talk about Final Fantasy XII Zodiac Age. Final Fantasy XII Zodiac Age, the game looks good. It's handled very similarly to the way that they did Final Fantasy X HD Remaster. The music sounds the same. I don't think they really remixed the music. I'm not sure. I have to look that up specifically because when I was looking at all the stuff there, it didn't mention anything about the music being remixed. The game looks good as far as being cleaned up, being solid, being upscaled. It looks pretty good for what it was. I didn't spend a lot of time with it, but it was still good. Let's talk about Dragon Quest Heroes 2. I also got a chance to check that out as well. Dragon Quest Heroes 2 looks pretty damn good. It was fun. It's very similar. If you play Dragon Quest Heroes 1, you know exactly what to expect. This is a Musou game, just takes place in the Dragon Quest universe. Very similar to the other game. So there really isn't much really to kind of tackle on there. It was still fun. It was still interesting, and I can't wait to see how that kind of like turns out and how it actually progresses from there. They also had Nier Automata, but again, I'm reviewing Nier Automata here on the Koalition now, so look for my review of Nier Automata later this week. I'm still playing it for review, so I'm not really going to talk about that now. And I did see the game there a little bit more, but again, I already have a copy of the game, so we'll talk about that later in the week. Finally, 2 of the games I got to check out with Team 17, right? I got to check out Ukulele again, which is good. I got a chance to see a brand new level of Ukulele, which was awesome. It was an ice level. The game is coming along very, very well. I can't wait for the release. It's coming up within the next 4 weeks or 4 weeks and change, just about, you know, as an estimate. We're going to be reviewing it here on the site as it comes out. What I will say is that if you love those platformer games from back in the day, you love Banjo-Kazooie, you love Super Mario 64, you love Donkey Kong Country 64, or Donkey Kong 64, I should say, any of those style of games, you're going to love Ukulele. It's right up your alley. It feels exactly what you want it to be, exactly what you expect, and it feels and sounds very similar to like a spiritual successor to Banjo-Kazooie. The music, everything is right on point. Another game that I got a chance to check out, I also got to check out The Escapist 2. The Escapist 2, I never played the first Escapist, to be totally honest with you. But I like what this game is doing. I think it's very complex. You know, there's a lot of things to keep track of. as far as, the time schedule that you play on, the different types of favors and missions that you could partake in order to kind of escape the prison. One of the new things that they're doing this time around is that they're introducing multi-leveled or multi-floored prisons to actually escape from. So you'll go into a prison. In the demo that I played, there was a 2-story prison that I was actually being a part of, and you have to go to different floors to complete different objectives to get some of the inmates or anybody else that's around to help you escape the prison. It was fun. It was a very short-lived experience. It wasn't too complex. I know that the actual escapes could get very, very complex, with all the different stuff that you have to keep track of and the stuff that you have to do. But this was kind of more simplified and streamlined for the demo that was at PAX East, and I think the game is coming along well. So if you love the first Escapist, you're definitely going to love the second Escapist. But that was my day 2. I had played a lot more on day 2 than I did day 1.
That sounds awesome. I will add that Escapist 2 looks awesome. I did have a chance to check that out as well, so that looks awesome. We'll see. Well, man, so many great games coming out, and Square Enix, all the Square Enix stuff sounded awesome as well. So I'll be very curious to hear if there are people that do have any specific questions for you after this podcast about some of the upcoming games.
Yeah, just feel free to ask me in the comment section, guys, or in the chat. Anything, make sure that you guys send us all the feedback and all the questions that you have. So that way, when I do go to stuff like that, or when I do end up seeing these games, I can always address them. Again, we're open here at the Koalition. We're always willing to communicate with you guys. So again, don't be shy to send us any questions you have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so now the final day for you, Mr. Max. How about you let us know how day 3 of PAX East went?
Okay, so I started off my day 3 by going over to really check out Lawbreakers, because they had this big booth set up the whole time, and I was looking at it throughout the weekend, but I really wanted to stop and watch it this time around. And it was kind of funny because it had one of the biggest presences there. It just had this massive booth, and they were doing tournaments and having people constantly playing it the whole time, trying to show it off. And I was watching it for a little bit, and I was like, this just looks like another just generic shooter. It doesn't look like anything super special. It has its gimmick where it's zero gravity sometimes, and you have gravity powers and you can jump around and stuff regarding that. But I didn't really get the appeal. It just looked like kind of an enhanced Call of Duty to me, but on the Unreal Engine, I believe it's on. It looked like it was a kind of an Unreal Tournament art style and everything like that. But it's just kind of interesting to see Cliffy B go from something like Gears of War to something like this now, where it's just nothing crazy, nothing new. I thought he would try and do something new and innovative and everything, because that's what he was talking about a long time when he was taking his break. He's like, yeah, we're coming out with something huge. You're all gonna love it. I'm gonna try out the beta this upcoming weekend just to get hands on myself, but I don't think anything really big is gonna come of that. I think it's just gonna kind of come and go, which is kind of a shame. I tried out this game called Shadow Tactics: Blades of the Shogun. I went up to it just because I saw someone playing it and it looked pretty interesting to me. It's an isometric top-down hardcore stealth game where you roam around and you can see everyone at once, because it's top down, and you're this guy who has to go through different villages and kind of pickpocket guards. You have small objectives like pickpocketing guards or getting to a certain area to open a lever and stuff in the demo that I played. And it was a really interesting change of pace, because normally in first person or third person stealth games, you're from the view of your character. You're not able to see everyone and their fields of view and everything. So it was interesting because I could do things like climb on roofs and plan out different enemies' patterns and where they walk through and everything. And I could just set traps easily because I would know where they're coming from. But then the game kind of makes it difficult for you by having tons and tons of different enemies to come across, and ones that don't walk around a lot, ones that sit staring at each other talking, so you can't sneak up on one or the other. You have to try and distract them, but then distracting one might attract 3 other ones that will come over. And it's cool because you can see them all coming, but you can't always do something about it. So sometimes you'll just be waiting for your death as you're trying to run away. And I was getting my ass kicked over and over and over again, but I was enjoying it the whole time because it was one of those games that it was kind of hard to preview because it's one of those games you need to sit and play for like hours and hours. But it definitely had me intrigued, and there's a demo up on Steam right now. I actually found out. I talked to them afterwards. The game has been out since December, but on PC, and it's coming to consoles later on this year. But like it reviewed really, really well. Like it's Rock Paper Shotgun recommended. Like PC Gamer, I think, gave it like an 85 and stuff like that. But just apparently no one really heard of it. And I was talking to the dev, and of course, like they're not going to say their game is bad. But he was just sitting there. He was like so sad that no one had ever heard of it. And I was like, yeah, it looks really cool. I would love to try it out more. And if it really, really clicks with me, then I would write about it. But I want to make sure that it is actually that good and that it wasn't just the demo that was really cool, because those ideas could like fall flat later on, if you know what I mean. And then I also got to try out Divinity Original Sin 2, which was really, really cool. If you guys know, the first game is actually another top-down isometric RPG, but it's a lot more like Baldur's Gate and like those style of games where there's just hours and hours worth of like side quests and content where you like walk into a town and you're talking to someone endlessly and you're getting a bunch of quests and you're always getting sidetracked and doing all this stuff because the game is jam-packed. But what was interesting is that the first game was 2 players, and you could either do co-op or you can do like kind of what they call competitive questing, where you both exist in the world, but you can affect each other's worlds. Like you can do whatever you want. You're both playing the game at the same time, even if you're in split screen playing local, but you can explore the world as much as you want. You're not limited to staying in the same area as one another. So what's really interesting about that is that you can, like, if I'm further than, say, like Rich, you're playing with me, if I get much further than you into the game, I can start assassinating like different quest givers that I know that you'd be interested in getting. So by the time you get to that area, the quest givers are already dead. And you'd be like screwed. There wouldn't be anything you could do. So we can kind of mess around with each other in that way. And if we end up finding each other, we can fight. We can like go to war. And then if I'm losing, I can just run away. And then the second game takes that and it ups it to 4 players. So now you can you could play the whole game by yourself, or you could have up to 4 players in one world existing, all just trying to screw with each other, all playing co-op. And the coolest thing about it was actually that at the end, the PR guy was telling me at the very, very end, only one person can be divinity. Like the goal of the game is to become divinity, become like a god, and only one person can do that. So if you're trying to play the campaign all together, you know that at the end of the game, only one of you can truly win. So yeah, you can be like co-op and be all buddy for now, but eventually, you know, like only one of you can get out of there like alive and win. So it's kind of interesting to see what that would do to people and how that dynamic would work. And I guess the best way to describe it, because I was talking to some of the fans of the game who played the first, because I unfortunately did not get to play the first one. It was one game that I always wanted to try out but never got to. I was talking to some of the fans, and they said the best way to describe it is basically Dungeons and Dragons in a game. This is the best form of Dungeons and Dragons in a game, and that's awesome to me. That's very, very appealing. It's one of those games that you're going to have to sit down and play and like try and not play anything else because it's just so long and in depth and you're not going to want to forget about it. But honestly, the whole co-op thing is what really, really has me intrigued. Like I would want to try that out with like a friend or maybe even 2, because it's also interesting. They can't like get ahead without you. You all have to be playing at the same time because it's P2P. So only the host has the game saved on their computer. So it's not like a persistent world like an MMO or anything like that. So there's no like cheating like that where someone can play ahead if they have more time. You all have to be playing at the same time. So you can always be kind of aware of what they're doing, or maybe not. Like you can stay hidden from them the whole time and not talk to each other at all and just see if you end up running into each other and stuff like that. It's very, very cool. I also forgot to mention that I saw Mass Effect Andromeda multiplayer gameplay on Friday, actually. I forgot to mention that. And I was very, very, very reassured, because the game looks exactly like Mass Effect 3's multiplayer. Like, honestly, if you hadn't told me it was Andromeda's for a little bit, I would like think it was Mass Effect 3's. But that's not a bad thing, because they're basically improving on everything. I was talking to some people that were playing it because I didn't want to wait in the 2-hour-long line to play it because the game's coming out in less than a week. I figured I can wait, you know. But they were just telling me, yeah, it's like they took every single aspect of the game and just tweaked it or improved on it a little bit more and just made it they're working on longevity. They're working on like making you want to play the game like endlessly when it comes to multiplayer. and it's just really, really tight and solid, like you would expect from a Mass Effect game. And all of the new classes like kind of balance out together, and they work really well together. They said that was a lot of the focus, it seems, but that was just really nice to see, because I was a bit worried about that game when I heard they were going over like the Frostbite engine and everything. I wasn't sure if they were going to just overhaul the combat, but no, it really just looked the same. So that's really good to see. Other than that, my Sunday was it was just cool. I just saw a lot of cool games, kind of like those two. Those two were definitely my big highlights, though. Like, those are games I'm definitely going to want to follow up on in the future, both Divinity Original Sin and Shadow Tactics. And Shadow Tactics is actually out, so I'm probably going to end up picking that up very soon. But then I left kind of early. I was really sad to leave. I didn't want to leave PAX. Like, I was just looking around and I was just like, damn, this was just a whole experience that I'm still like processing. I actually went onto the PAX East subreddit, and I saw that post-PAX depression is like a real thing, kind of like post-concert depression is. Like, there's a subreddit for it. I was just like, yep, I'm feeling that right now. But yeah, I went home. My flight was at like 7, so I was able to stay until like 4:30 at PAX, which was pretty cool. And then I had to head back, so I got to spend a lot of time there still, and I didn't have to like leave early or anything, which was really cool. But yeah, honestly, I just had a really, really awesome time. Not really a dull moment at PAX. Nothing really to complain about, honestly, aside from like the food prices. Those are pretty ridiculous, but like that's to be expected. But no, it was a really, really cool experience, and something I could totally see myself getting used to and just doing. And just, I love talking to the devs. Seeing devs just light up when you talk about their game and everything is just one of the coolest things.
I agree with that. Yeah, absolutely. And also the feeling of the last day, that's a feeling we know all too well. It is a bit sad, because you do spend time going to these events. You barely see every, like us, you got to meet. Obviously, yeah, it's a very interesting experience, but it's great to be in that environment, to be among a lot of people who we all have this, they all love and have the same passion for gaming. So it truly is a good feeling to have, and I'm pretty sure, when you do go to E3, you're going to have the same feeling when you leave. I mean, that last day is tough, but still it's a fun experience to have overall. So
Completely agree. It's definitely something that I'm very, very happy to experience. And again, thank you guys so much for like giving me this opportunity to experience PAX. Like, that was unreal. It really was.
Oh no, of course, anytime. Yeah, great experience. Glad to hear that you had a great time, and we look forward to going to other shows together as well.
Yes, looking forward to meeting you, Rich, and Gary, of course.
Yes, that needs to happen. That needs to happen. I know Gary is watching, so Gary, you need to make sure you get to E3. You know what the deal is. So Mr. Lugo, let us know about your final day at PAX.
Yeah, my final day at PAX wasn't all that eventful. I mean, I really took the last day because I actually left for home that same day, later in like towards the afternoon, evening, to come back home. And I only really took the day to see, people that I wanted to check out and say hello to throughout the course of the weekend that I didn't get to do so. I maybe went to one panel from a friend of mine, from David, over at the ARG podcast, or the ARG podcast, and that was cool. I also got to see a few other people running around, a lot of YouTubers, a lot of different personalities that I never met at an event before, but it was good seeing everyone, that was hanging out at the event and just, chilling out, here and there. So other than that, I didn't really play a lot of games at PAX that last day, because most of the stuff that I wanted to play or that really interested me, I played on the first 2 days. And the other thing too is some of the games that I really, again, I would have jived into probably had like a lot of lines that I just was like completely turned off to. I know Mass Effect Andromeda was there playable. I saw it throughout the entirety of the show, and I wanted to check it out, but that line, man, was way too ridiculous. I was like, this is clearly not happening.
It was 2 hours on average.
Yeah,
were
exactly.
saying.
Like
Unreal.
the Nintendo Switch at some point, just to go play those games was the same thing. And a lot of that was. And same thing also with the PlayStation VR games, because I wanted to play what was it? Farpoint one more time. I wanted to check that out ever since E3, but sometimes you're just not able to do so. It was a little bit OD as far as the lines, but that's just the nature of the beast when it comes to PAX East. And, a lot of that also has to do with not getting appointments and stuff when you're not able to. But it was still a fun PAX overall. I still had a fun, interesting time this weekend. It was very insightful, speaking to a lot of individuals that I ran into throughout the course of the weekend. Some people I had never met before. It was really cool to meet them for the first time. People like some call me Johnny, Triforce, Miss Fushi, a whole bunch of other individuals that were on YouTube that I thought were pretty dope. Chastity from GameSpot. People like that was pretty awesome to finally say hello to for the first time, as people that, being part of the industry and having watched other people's work or having interacted with people on social media. That was surreal and that was awesome. And it just made my PAX experience that much more better on top of the awesome games that I played. So I enjoyed myself. It was pretty dope.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it was dope overall. A great experience for the both of you. And I did again want to give a special thanks to you guys for attending, as well as Anthony Nash and Tatiana as well. Because I know we had quite a bit of people there this year. So obviously people are definitely going to be looking forward to this podcast. They can get an idea of some games that you guys are talking about, and they'll also see some stuff that you guys cover on the site in regarding to some of these games. I did want to have one final question to ask you guys. So if you could say that there were maybe two games from the show that you think are going to be two games people need to keep their eyes on, what would you say those two games were? And I'll let you go first, Max, if you could think of two games off the top of your head that you think absolutely everybody should watch out for them later this year.
Okay, so Divinity Original Sin 2, like definitely. That was one of the coolest games I've played in a very, very long time. Like if you're into those types of isometric RPG games and like Baldur's Gate, I think like games like that, it's unreal. This looks to be like the pinnacle of these sorts of games. Like Pillars of Eternity, that game is incredible, but Divinity Original Sin like kind of takes that, and the co-op twist is just really, really cool to me. Like that makes it a whole new experience in my eyes. And then as for another game, that one I'm gonna have to think on for a little bit. I'm trying to JJ, do you have yours right now? Like, do you know yours right now? Both of them?
It's a little bit tough because
yeah, right?
there was a lot of games, and the funny thing is, well, that number one, and number two is that a lot of these games are coming out very soon.
Yeah.
It's one of those things like it's not something to really look out for, especially if it's coming out so soon, because you're going to be able to check it out like within the next like few months, like not even. I would have to say some good games, or at least I would recommend that people look more deeper into. Has Been Heroes, definitely. Next Machina, definitely. That I feel like is a really solid gameplay experience. And I would have to say maybe, if I, again, based off the games that I saw, Little Nightmares. I think that if I had to choose one game that was probably my best experience at PAX East, I would have to say Little Nightmares. I think Little Nightmares is the solid game, because either most of the other games I've already experienced, I already know what's going to go down with them. I already feel like I have a good basis of like what those experiences are going to be like. Little Nightmares is the one game that I will say that I didn't know what to expect going into it, and I didn't know what to expect by the time I was done playing that demo. So that's a game I feel like is going to do pretty well that more people should look into.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Rich.
Oh no, I just was going to say, yeah, I know it's very hard to really narrow it down with some of this stuff, because there's a lot of great games that were there. So I understand if did have trouble to think about that, because even if I was asked the same question with GDC, it would be very hard to answer that question. So I understand, but Little Nightmares I have heard about, so I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to Mass Effect Andromeda, obviously, the multiplayer. I don't really know what to, multiplayer is like, I still don't really understand why they added multiplayer to Mass Effect 3, but it was great.
Exactly. Yeah.
The story, though, the actual campaign, that needs to deliver. So, I said it on co-op. I'll say it on this show again. If it does not deliver, you will hear me. I will have a lot to say about Mass Effect Andromeda. It will not be positive, but hey, we'll find out in a week. But yeah, with PAX East, I fully understand if it was hard to really narrow it down. There's too many great games, a lot of great games,
Yeah.
But you
I have to say, I actually another one that I would really recommend that I was just looking through the business cards to kind of jog my memory is actually this game Hob by Runic Games, the guys who made Torchlight 1 and 2.
Wow.
Yeah, this game I ran into it like randomly just because I had a lot of time in between appointments and there was this really long line, but that's when I waited in. It was like a half-hour long wait. It's this platformer that kind of throws back to the PS2 era of platformers. The like kind of think Jak and Daxter and like Ratchet and Clank and stuff like that. It was a Jak and Daxter kind of art style, which was really cool, but it was a much darker game. Like Jak and Daxter was always kind of funny and light, whereas Hob is much darker. You're playing this. I don't really know the character. You didn't really get much insight on the character because you're thrown into like the middle of the game. But basically, what you're trying to do is restore the world. It's a world that's part machine and part just like nature. And machine has been kind of taking over. Machine has been growing. Like think evil AIs have basically been taking over the world, and then nature is also being corrupted by like different natural life sources that are not necessarily evil because they're just trying to survive, but they're just taking over like the world, and they're harmful to the species that you play as. And you're trying to just explore the world and resurrect just the old days, resurrect like all of the good parts of the world, the nature. Like it's interesting because a lot of nature was stuck underground, and I found myself like having to go through and kind of raise it up. So I think that's part of the story is figuring out why it's underground. Like it didn't make sense at that time, but she said that's because I was thrown into the middle of the game. So of course I'll have to see if like that gets fleshed out more when it comes to the story. But the combat was pretty difficult. I want to say it was kind of similar to what Breath of the Wild looks like. I know Breath of the Wild is compared to Dark Souls, but to me, Breath of the Wild looks more like flashy and just kind of quick. So I would say it's closer to that than it is Dark Souls. And the platforming was brutal. It's from a top-down perspective, not exactly like an isometric. You can go pretty close to the character, but it's from a top-down perspective, and that would kind of screw with your field of view. But she said that was done purposefully. So sometimes when you're jumping from like a small platform to another platform, that would really screw with you. And I found myself dying quite a lot because of that. But it was never like bad. I was always having fun when I was dying and everything. And the game is beautiful, by the way. They were all running on PS4 Pros. The game is coming out for PlayStation. Yeah, right. The game is coming out for PS4, and it's coming to Steam as well later this year. But it also just ran really, really well. They had a very solid build going, and also the devs were just really cool. Like Runic Games, if you like Torchlight, it's that kind of similar art style, but just darker. So, and I think that's beautiful. I love that kind of art style. So, yeah, definitely check out that game. That is a game. I can't believe I forgot about that game. That game was awesome. That was one of my highlights, definitely.
It sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, well, hey, it's a lot of great games that were at the show. A lot of great games to look forward to. So definitely looking forward to checking out a lot of the stuff that you guys talked about. So you have any final shout outs or final words, thoughts, reflections you would like to share with the audience?
Yeah, I would just have to say, be sure to be checking out the Koalition like every day for the next week or two because we have a lot of content coming. There's a lot of games to cover, and some of them are just going to be like previews that we're going to just come out, and that'll be that. But some are going to be games that we're previewing and then reviewing later on when they actually come out, and some are going to be following up on in a few months. So be sure to keep checking out all the different content because there is a ton of games to be writing about right now.
Absolutely. I looked in drafts. There's a lot of stuff coming. I got some stuff coming as well. So yeah, definitely check out the site. Stay, just keep updated on everything. How about you, Mr. Lugo? Any final words, shout outs?
Final word is that I really enjoyed PAX East. I thought this was a successful year, despite the cold, despite all the other craziness that was happening around the show and everything else. But it was still a fun year. Just big shout outs to everybody that I saw out there. Big shout out to Greg, Tim, and Nick when I saw them for their panel. They were very nice, very cool peeps. Great people to kind of at least listen to and learn from a little bit, as well as also see at shows like this. That was dope. Big shout outs to other people that I saw there. I give shout outs to Robert Workman, shout outs to Ninja Sister, shout outs to Trevor Starkey, Zyger. Again, the list is long. Some call me Johnny, really Schiller, HMK, Skylar Wing, Glitch X City, Umbrella Dispatch. Again, I could be here all day just naming people. So if I forget you in this whole just random rambling here of shout outs, I really apologize, but you guys know who you are. You guys were really nice. You guys really treated me good. You guys were very special as far as making the entire weekend very special, not just for me, but for everybody else that was around you as we hung out throughout the entirety of the weekend while we were all doing all our own separate work and doing a whole bunch of game related stuff, which was awesome. Shout outs also to everybody listening to this show that's checking out our debrief of PAX East this year. Again, there's a lot of content coming very soon, not just from all of us here, but from everybody else. A lot of good game stuff. We got reviews coming. Again, I got my Nier Automata review coming later this week, more than likely. I'm hoping sometime before the weekend that's going to drop on the site because, again, with PAX East and everything else that's been happening, there's been a lot of stuff all over the place. But I got interviews coming. I got interviews with Fujimoto for Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. I have interviews with Okayama-san about Kingdom Hearts Unchained Key. Hopefully we can get those up later in the week, as well as, again, a whole bunch of other stuff that we're going to be doing going into the next weekend. And again, we're going to be doing the co-op again next weekend, so that's going to be fun. So definitely a lot of good stuff to get excited about.
Absolutely. Without a doubt.
Oh, and one more thing. I think I almost completely forgot about this because there's a funny story that's attached to this. Because I told you about this, Rich. Shout out to Gio Corsi from PlayStation. If you guys don't know, pretty sure you guys have already seen Gio Corsi, head of third-party relations over at PlayStation. The guy's a cool dude. Walks around with hockey jerseys that say PlayStation on them. He's a cool dude because he's like the Saint Nick of the PlayStation world. Because I just went up to him randomly this weekend just to say hello, just to say hi, because I see Gio at a couple different events. I've seen him at E3. I've seen him at PS PlayStation Experience. I've seen him even at a previous PAX East, if I remember correctly. But I saw him at this year's PAX East, went up to him, said hello, say, hey, what's up? I wanted a picture, got a picture, and all that. And then he asked me, hey, did you play Neo yet? And I was like, yeah, I played Neo. I did previous stuff. Hey, did you play Horizon Zero Dawn yet? And I was like, no, I was going to buy it when I got home, afterwards. He's like, no, you don't. And he gave me a free copy of Horizon Zero Dawn, just on a whim, just for saying hi. I thought that was awesome. And it wasn't just me. There was a bunch of other people he was going around giving a bunch of video games to. And I thought that was cool because it was random, completely unexpected. And I thought that was just something he didn't have to do for anybody. And yet he does it because I see him do that at multiple shows, just randomly, just give codes away. And I thought that was pretty freaking awesome. It was a really cool, solid thing to do for people, just randomly that were hanging around the PlayStation booth. So shout outs to Gio Corsi. We love you, dude.
That was very awesome. Yes. Man, maybe that happens again at a future event.
Let me run into Shuhei. Let me see what happens there. He's gonna be like, "I'll never let you change your PlayStation name." I said, because he gets bugged about that every day. Let's be real for a second. Shuhei, over at PlayStation, Shuhei Yoshida, guys. If you didn't know who we were talking about, Shuhei gets bugged about that every day. He gets blamed for it. So I'm pretty sure he's like, you know what? I'm done. I'm just gonna be telling people no. just for goofs and stuff. But yeah, those are my shout outs for everybody at PAX East or everybody that's checking out this podcast now. Thank you guys for making this show or making the Koalition what it is. Hopefully our next big event is going to be E3. It's in June. Oh, that's going to be a big deal. We got a lot of stuff planned out, a lot of stuff we're looking towards for that. So definitely be on the lookout for all the content for over the next few months. It's a lot to get excited about. A lot of big things that we want to do and hopefully make some great content for all of you.
Absolutely. And I want to take the time to once again, I want to first and foremost thank you guys for actually attending PAX. I was planning to attend PAX, but we had a couple of issues over here on my end, so was unable to make it. But again, I want to make sure I personally thank you guys as well as Tatiana and Anthony for actually going to PAX, and I'm looking forward to all the coverage that you guys have planned. I definitely want to thank the people who continue to support us, the Patreon supporters, as well as the people who are watching this show live or listening to it later. You guys are pretty much what keeps us going and talking about this stuff. And definitely feel free to be more vocal and let us know, about things that you would like to see us do in terms of, the future. I can say for E3, we do have some plans for E3. We are going to try to show you guys more of how E3 is, maybe some more videos, so on and so forth. So we're trying to work through that stuff now, but definitely stay tuned to the site for all the content from PAX East, as well as, all the things we have forthcoming in terms of reviews, previews, so on and so forth. So stay tuned for that. Thank you again for all the support, and we'll talk to you all next week.